Welcome to the Wild and Fierce podcast. We are your hosts, Amber
and Johanna. We're here to explore womanhood through real, raw, and unfiltered conversations.
Please remember this podcast is for education only and not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare professional.
Let's dive in. Hello, welcome to the Wild and Fierce podcast. Today, I am doing our very first solo episode and going to be covering minerals and burnout. So, I wanted to talk about this because at Wild Muse Wellness, we focus on mineral replenishment. We test for minerals using the hair tissue mineral analysis. And burnout and mineral depletion is actually a big part of my story. I've talked about this a lot in other episodes and past episodes. And working on mineral replenishment really was one of the biggest things that pulled me out of burnout. And I think this is the case for so many women. So many of our one-on-one clients are in a very mineral depleted pattern. It's something that we see. It's called 4 lows on a HTMA. It's where your calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium are all super low. And when that happens, your body just doesn't have what it needs in order to do the things it needs to do. So because this is so prevalent, and I'm going to talk about why women are a little bit more predisposed or prone to mineral imbalances and nutrient depletions. But because this is so common, I really want to do an episode talking about this and giving you some tools on, one, understanding minerals and why they're so important and why they can be such a big game changer. But then two, also talking about the minerals, talking about some specific minerals that I highly recommend focusing on, and then how to start repleting them as well. Because I want you to be able to take, tools away from this episode and actually be able to make changes. So if you feel like you are just like burning at both ends of the stick, and if one more person tells you to slow down when you say that you're exhausted, you just feel like you might scream, this episode is definitely for you. Burnout is not just mental, it's a whole body imbalance. And like I mentioned before, minerals play a really big role in that. Partly because when we're under stress, when we go, when we do a lot of things, we burn minerals at a much higher rate. So if we're not constantly replenishing them, it's very easy to end up in a depleted state. So I want to start off with talking about kind of like a little mini like minerals 101. Because until you know about minerals, you don't actually understand minerals. Like, I'm sure that you guys hear, like, oh, nutrient density or, mineral replenishment, vitamin replenishment. I think people know that these things are important, but they don't actually know what they do. And I think once you know what they do, it's so much easier to focus on them and make a big change. So, minerals, like a very simple definition, is they're essential elements your body needs to function. They are essential. They're like little spark plugs for every single bodily process. And so this is where we can see depletions or imbalances contributing to symptoms. So for example, if you don't have enough potassium or don't have enough calcium or calcium is displaced in your body, you can have low thyroid functioning symptoms, things like cold hands, feet, weight gain, hair loss, etc. If you don't have enough potassium, you can't make stomach acid. If you don't have enough sodium, you can't make stomach acid. And if you can't make stomach acid, you'll often experience bloating, indigestion, acid reflux. Magnesium is a really, really big one. When we're under stress, we burn magnesium 300 times faster than we do at a non-stressed stage. And most people don't get enough magnesium. I do feel like we're going to dive into magnesium here shortly, but I do feel like magnesium is one where a lot of people like to supplement it. And it's something that I like to make sure that we exercise some caution with because all minerals are interconnected and they're synergistic. And that just means that one will influence others. The rule of thumb is one is going to influence at least 2 other minerals. So, for example, your magnesium levels is going to influence your calcium and your sodium. And then calcium will influence potassium and sodium will influence potassium. And then it all gets kind of messy really fast. So, the analogy that I often give is imagine minerals kind of being on seesaws. So, for example, like sodium and magnesium are on a seesaw, and you want to keep that seesaw nice and balanced. I know that would be very fun at the park, but you want to keep it nice and balanced because let's say you take a ton of magnesium and that's raising it, that could be plummeting your sodium, which then is going to affect the seesaw of sodium and potassium. So it's kind of like a spider web of seesaws. And while yes, we can have really great intentions with replenishing a nutrient via a supplement, we have to always ask, what are we accidentally doing to the cofactor minerals or even vitamins that are playing a role with that the first mineral. So for example, like if we take a magnesium supplement, what is that going to do to sodium and potassium and calcium, and how is that going to play a role in my body? So I love that magnesium and calcium I feel like often get a lot of limelight. I love that because they're very important, they're essential. However, we have to be very careful because of what they can do to other minerals too. So supplementation can be kind of tricky. So, the way I also like to explain minerals is yes, they're like the spark plugs for every cellular process, but they're kind of like if your body is an orchestra, minerals are the conductors. They're not actually like playing the instruments, but without them, nothing is in sync and nothing can function or process. And so that's where we can see really, really big imbalances and big symptoms significantly improve once we start working on mineral replenishment and balancing. They are essential, they're non negotiable. They regulate nerve conduction, muscle contraction, digestion, hydration, metabolism, hormone production, and so much more. They play a huge role in your nervous system as well. And like I mentioned before, when we are under a lot of stress, whether that be physical, emotional, or environmental, or maybe there's like something going on symptom wise in your body and it's really stressing you out, that increases mineral burn rate. So you're going to burn minerals faster, which then leads to deeper fatigue. And it's kind of like a catch-22 because when you increase your burn rate, you use up more minerals, making you more depleted, and then those depletions can make you more stress, which then increases your burn rate. And so a lot of things in the body are kind of like a cycle like that. So really where I want this episode to come in for you guys and then the work that we do at Wild Muse with our clients is throwing a wrench in that cycle and make it go into a positive direction versus a negative depleting direction. So big topic. I'm going to do my best to keep it easy to digest, easy to understand, so you can take away some of the main things that I think are most important and understand like the basics of the four main minerals that I want to talk about and how to start replenishing them. So, a couple of things that I do want to talk about is like the stress mineral burnout loop. I just mentioned this, but I want to give like some specific examples so you really can like grasp this. So, let's say you're under chronic stress. And chronic stress, I'm going to give the example of like going all the time or chronically feeling like you have to produce and fill your calendar. And the reason that I want to do that is because that is a very common personality type that we work with at Wild Muse, probably because that is me. I'm breaking the habit, but it was me. So now I attract a lot of women that are dealing with that. So, and I want to talk about that because that's also something we can control, right? So, like, yes, getting pregnant can increase your stress, work can, life can, like stuff like that, like traumatic life events can. But I wanted to like pick something that's like very like tangible and something that we actually have control over so that you know what you can make a change in. So let's say you have chronic stress because you have a hard time resting, you're constantly producing and you're constantly going. This is then going to increase your adrenal hormone production. So you're going to produce more cortisol, more adrenaline, which those are very productive hormones. I feel like social media almost like demonizes cortisol and adrenaline, but they're very protective, productive. We need them, they save our life. But we also have to understand that we can't constantly be producing them. So, chronic stress equals an increased adrenal gland hormone spike, which then increases sodium and potassium loss via urine and sweat. This is where, like a lot of women that are struggling with adrenal dysfunction, they sweat a lot. Just a little fun fact there. So then the increased sodium and potassium loss can then in turn contribute to low sodium and potassium levels in the body. That is then going to affect your adrenal function again, which is then going to not it'll make you so you don't have enough minerals to produce those hormones anymore. This is when you get to more of that adrenal burnout state. So then you have more fatigue. You might experience some blood pressure dysregulation, dizziness, cravings, caffeine dependence, waking up in the middle of the night, feeling like you constantly need like a dopamine hit, like constantly grabbing your phone or you can't sit still, whatever it might be. That is kind of like a chronic loop that we see a lot with women. Something else that we also see is if women are depleted in magnesium or calcium. And this can actually, on an HTMA, actually be really, really high and it's just dysregulated. But if they have dysregulated or low magnesium or calcium levels, this can contribute to tense muscles. I know personally when I was super, 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 super depleted back in like 2017, 2018, my traps, like my shoulder neck muscles, were so rock hard tight. Once I started learning about nutrient replenishment and stuff, I actually have pretty relaxed shoulders now. And that was contributing to like tension headaches and stuff. So, tense muscles, poor sleep, anxiety is huge, PMS symptoms. So we really need to pay attention to these loops because they can keep us in a very depleted state. And that's where or why at Wild Muse, we don't just work on the nutrition and the nutrient replenishment side of things. We also work on the lifestyle, habits, and nervous system side of things. That's a two-prong approach. It's honestly like why I don't love calling us just like nutritional therapy practitioners or nutritionists, because it's like we do so much more than just nutrition. So that's the loops, or those are some examples of some loops that I want you to pay attention to. And I'd say those are like the more common ones, 100% with clients. Okay, so now I really want to dive into like some specific minerals. I'm going to start with sodium, then we'll go into potassium, calcium, and then magnesium. These are considered our macro minerals, macro just meaning larger. We have trace minerals as well, and that's going to be things like copper, manganese, iodine, selenium, etc. So you need much, much smaller amounts. The reason we focus on macro minerals first is we use a lot of them, and they're the ones that we focus on balancing first because they play a role. Remember, they're all synergistic. They play a role most significantly with everything else. So I'm going to focus on sodium first. So sodium is really interesting and it gets a really bad reputation, especially in the conventional realm, where we could talk about like low sodium, don't have too much sodium, etc. And while that is true when it comes to refined sodium, so if you think of like, I had 5 guys the other day. I am currently 9 months pregnant, so I had 5 guys the other day and I just really wanted a milkshake and fries. And the next day I was so swollen, and it was because I had a ton of refined sea salt, or not refined sea salt, just refined sodium. And that can contribute to sodium dysregulation. When it comes to sodium itself, we really like to source this through sea salt. So sodium gets a bad reputation because we have started basically like taking the mineral of sodium and viewing it as the same thing as like refined sodium, which is a man-made ingredient that we put in a lot of processed foods, which can play a role in swelling, blood pressure issues, etc. And then saying, oh no, we need low sodium. But when you get sodium from natural sources like sea salt, it's actually very, very, very supportive. It is the most basic mineral, and you would be shocked at how many of our clients, I would say the majority of our clients, and I'm not exaggerating, like 90% plus of our clients are actually depleted in sodium. And it's because it's used for so many things. We need it to make stomach acid, and if we don't have enough sodium to make stomach acid, then we don't break the mineral down well from our foods, and then it's hard to replete it. So sodium, you'll see that like the general RDA, which is the recommended daily amount, is only 1,500 milligrams, which is actually really, really low. There are studies done that optimal wellness actually is more from 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams of sodium. So that's way more. It's double at the bottom end. It's 3,000 to 5,000. So that's 3 to 5 grams of sodium. And we highly recommend getting that from sea salt. Sodium is so, so important. It maintains blood volume and pressure. It supports nerve function. It keeps stomach acid production going. It plays a huge role in just like electrolyte regulation. We actually have sodium potassium pumps on each of our cells. So if we don't have enough sodium, things can't get in and out of our cells. And if things aren't getting in and out of your cells, things are definitely going to go out of whack. So it's a very, very key mineral. And if you eat a whole food diet, the key thing to know is you now have to add sodium or add sea salt onto your meals in order to get enough sodium. And I think because we've had it shoved down our throats for so long to go low sodium, we have a lot of people out here that are going on whole food diets and then not salting their foods. So then they get depleted in the most basic mineral so fast. So some signs of low sodium would be dizziness, low blood pressure, brain fog, constant fatigue, constantly feeling dehydrated, crepey skin, salt cravings, big one, poor stomach acid, digestive issues, adrenal issues. So some of the adrenal fatigue stuff, like feeling really wired and tired at night, feeling like you just are not rested no matter how much sleep you've gotten. I think those are like some of the biggest ones. With pregnancy, pregnant mamas, my goodness, we need so much sodium. It's actually insane. I'm like pregnancy braining this right now and completely forgetting. We need like, I think it's like up to like 7 to 8,000 milligrams, which is 7 to 8 grams of sodium a day. Which, just so you like can like grasp that, that is 1 teaspoon is 2,300 milligrams of sodium. So a lot of sodium. You need a lot. And I think the other side of things that's really tricky with sodium is when you're pregnant, you hear about preeclampsia a lot. And the standard recommendations for preeclampsia is to go low sodium. However, there's so much evidence out there that sodium from sea salt is actually super beneficial at preventing preeclampsia. So that's like a whole nother topic, whole nother episode. But it's important to know that sea salt, sodium from sea salt is very different than sodium from refined sodium from like Campbell's soup. So we need sodium from sea salt or mineral salts or broths, fermented foods, pickles, whatever it might be. You need that in order to replenish sodium, especially in pregnancy and breastfeeding. So going low sodium is often very counterproductive for blood pressure regulation, preeclampsia prevention, just swelling in general. Like it is crazy and just low energy, 100%. It's crazy. On days that I don't get enough sodium, I 100% can tell in my hands and my feet how much more puffy I am. I'll go take like a sea salt shot. I have a pretty like high sea salt tolerance, so I can do anywhere like half a teaspoon, 3/4 of a teaspoon, even like a full teaspoon, depending on the situation. And I'll either make a super salty drink and drink that, or I'll take a salt shot with like put some salt with some lemonade or orange juice or something like that, swirl it around so it dissolves and take it. You can also put salt in caps. And by the end of the day, my swelling is like completely gone. So it's a very key mineral. Like I said, it's one of the most basic minerals, and a lot of women are very depleted in it, especially postpartum women, because your burn rate increases so much, and then we're not replenishing it. And then we also have the stress of pregnancy on top of it. Pregnancy is beautiful, but it's also stressful on your body. So you kind of can see how we get depleted in sodium pretty quickly. Okay, I'm going to jump to potassium next. I'd say this is the second mineral that we definitely work on most with clients. Typically, most clients need either sodium or potassium. We work on those, and then we work on calcium or magnesium, kind of depending on what their levels are. So, potassium, the RDA is, I think it's like 2,300 milligrams, which is just crazy. That's super low. I believe it was like in the 80s. It used to be 4,700 milligrams, and then they cut it in half, which I have my own like conspiracy theory thoughts about that. It plays a really big role with energy production, blood sugar regulation, thyroid health, fluid balance and blood pressure, nerve signaling. So when you start to understand like how many key roles it plays in the body, it really makes you question why they cut the RDA in half. Hopefully our podcast doesn't like get shut down for me saying that. But we recommend the RDA being about 4,700 milligrams for women, for an adult woman. Pregnant mamas, you truly could not overdo potassium. We want to get it from foods. I do want to say that, like, put that out front, really, like, right here, right now. We want to get it from foods. We don't necessarily want to take supplements of potassium. That can really start to throw things really, really out of whack. So we always recommend foods first. But yeah, pregnant mamas and breastfeeding mamas, oh my goodness, you could have so much potassium. So I would go at least 5 to 6,000, if not more. Ideally, you probably want more potassium than sodium. So just kind of keep that in mind. Some signs of low potassium: muscle weakness, heart palpitations, fatigue, constipation, sugar cravings. I've also seen it play a role in like anxiety, blood sugar dysregulation symptoms. So, like anxiety, waking up in the middle of the night, afternoon crashes, just low energy and stuff like that. Potassium, like I said, works with sodium and the sodium potassium pump to get things in and out of cells. So that's where a lot of people are not getting enough potassium and are not getting enough sodium, which then makes it so you can't get things in and out of cells. Some main sources of potassium that we often recommend are like potatoes, any kind of potatoes. Please go hard on potatoes. We love potatoes at Wild Muse. Sweet potatoes, coconut water, beans, squash, bananas, fruit, dried apricots, avocado, tomatoes, aloe juice, inner leaf is also super high. There's some controversial stuff whether that's, pregnancy safe or not, so do your own research with that and see if you're comfortable with it. Dried apricots, dried papaya are super dense in potassium. Most dried fruits are really dense in potassium. I would say for potassium, it's really easy to get, like a couple thousand milligrams because it's in dairy, it's in meat, it's in fruits, it's in roots, it's in most foods. But it does take some intention to get to like the 4,700, 5,000, 6,000 plus. Getting some things that are like really dense can be helpful. I will put in our show notes. I'm going to make a note. I don't have Amber here, so I have to make notes for myself. Mount Capra Mineral Whey is super rich in potassium, and this is, I don't really fully like know how they do it, but they basically pull the minerals from their whey when they're making whey protein powder, right? Is my understanding. Don't like quote me on that. So go look into it on your own. But the mineral whey, it's not actually like whey protein powder. Like it doesn't actually have very much protein in it. It is just a mineral rich powder that comes from goat's milk. So it is actually, a lot of people tolerate it even if they're lactose intolerant, but it's super rich in potassium. I think there's like 1,100 or 1,200 milligrams of potassium in it, and that I would absolutely use in pregnancy and postpartum. So that could be a really great way to just like bump up your potassium intake for sure. Okay, I'm gonna jump to calcium next. So the RDA is around 1,000 milligrams a day for women. If you're over 50 years old, around 1,200 milligrams. And honestly, something that's really cool about calcium that like blew my mind is your demand for calcium goes up in pregnancy, but your ability to absorb it also increases. So it's not necessarily that you have to increase your intake, your body just gets better at absorbing it, which is so cool. So our bodies are just so awesome. So calcium is not just for bones, but it is for bones, teeth, stuff like that. But it helps with muscle contraction, nerve communication, hormone release and production. It plays a role in clotting. It plays a huge role in thyroid function and blood sugar regulation. So it's really important. There is something called a calcium shell, and we see this with not a ton of our clients, but with some of our clients, and it's like a long-term chronic stress response where your body dysregulates calcium, and instead of sending it to your hard tissues like your teeth and your bones, it sends it to your soft tissues. So then it basically saturates your cells with calcium. And it's a protective mechanism where your body is almost like putting armor over your nervous system, and it's a protecting your nervous system. So it's a protective mechanism, but it can cause a lot of issues with thyroid function, with painful periods. It's really connected to blood sugar dysregulation 100%. So definitely paying attention to calcium can be really helpful. Viewing it on your HTMA test can be really helpful to see like, okay, is there calcium dysregulation, or are we high, are we low, and why? Highly recommend not necessarily taking a calcium supplement. So some sources of calcium would be like dairy, sardines, leafy greens, sesame seeds, almonds. You can take eggshell powder or make your own. And then there's also pearl powder that has, pearl powder and eggshell powder both have, it's either calcium carbonate or calcium bicarbonate. I can't remember, but it's a very usable form of calcium. So that can be super helpful for replenishing calcium. I'm not a huge fan of calcium supplements. They can be hard on the body and they can definitely cause some dysregulation. Some signs of low calcium: PMS, cramping, period pain, etc. Brittle nails. I'd also say that high calcium or dysregulated calcium also plays a big role with PMS, period pain, cramping, etc. Brittle nails can be definitely a sign of low calcium or dysregulated calcium. Muscle spasms, 100%, anxiety, insomnia. I actually see like a very classic sign of low calcium is depression, and we have to definitely work on calcium intake in that situation. Little fun fact about calcium: it has a relationship with iron. And so if you have iron dysregulation, which I want to do an episode on this eventually, if you have iron dysregulation, like iron's not functioning properly in the body, this can look high or low on labs. I definitely recommend working with someone. We're happy to help, but working with someone to see like what your iron levels are. And you have to look beyond just ferritin, looking at what your iron levels are to see if there's iron dysregulation. But if there is, which there is for so many of our clients, if there is, that can play a huge role with your ability to absorb and use calcium. So we see a lot of women have iron dysregulation and then they're lactose intolerant, which is really interesting. That was my story, that was Katrina's story, and it's a lot of our clients' story. So once we work on balancing out iron, we can replenish calcium, and then a lot of our clients become no longer lactose intolerant. That was me. I know I'm a huge dairy lover. I consume dairy all the time. I got a milkshake at Five Guys, and if you told me that I could do that like 5 years ago, I would not have believed you because I would be running to the bathroom in my past life. Okay, gonna jump to magnesium. Magnesium is super, super important. The RDA is around 320 milligrams for women. It's very well known that it's part of over 300 biochemical reactions. There's some evidence that it's actually part of over 3,000 biochemical reactions. So it's a very, very important mineral, and majority of people are depleted because we burn it at a rate of 300 times faster when we're under stress, and we know that we're under stress a lot, especially as women. So it plays a big role in relaxation, blood sugar regulation, hormone production, detoxification, thyroid function, and adrenal function. So pretty much like your whole body. Some signs of low magnesium would be anxiety, irritability, restless sleep, constipation, headaches, cramps, adrenal fatigue, stuff that I talked about before, thyroid issues, Hashimoto's is a big one, really not sleeping well. I restless sleep, but really not sleeping well. It's huge. Plays a big role in energy regulation. It plays a big role in cycle health too. So it's definitely a very, very important mineral, but I do want to say be very, very cautious about taking supplements with it because it does have the relationship with sodium. And if you are deficient in sodium or potassium, it can push those down even more if you're taking it orally. You're kind of like giving your body excess, and an oral supplement, I would say, because you're giving your body excess amounts that your body's not quite ready for. So it can actually make you feel more fatigued or more puffy. Like when I wasn't ready for magnesium and I took it, I would actually get bags under my eyes, and I don't often have like bags under my eyes. So it definitely is very, very important, but we have to use it strategically, and I think we need to be very, very cautious about taking it orally. And unfortunately, I think it is one of the most common minerals that we have clients coming to us taking on their own because they see on social media or they hear like you can never get enough magnesium, which is true, but we need to be cautious with it, with taking it orally, because your body may not be ready for it yet. So I do really recommend topical magnesium. You can get it in sprays, gels, lotions, or taking magnesium salt baths. That allows your skin to absorb what it needs without overdoing it. So this is a really gentle way to start replenishing magnesium without accidentally causing some of the consequences if your body's not fully ready to take oral magnesium. Some food sources would be like pumpkin seeds, dark chocolate, leafy greens, avocado, nuts, legumes. But I often see that most women need some form of topical magnesium as well to help replenish things, and then potentially oral, but we just have to make sure that their body's in the right place for it. Because we do burn it at such a high rate and when we're under stress. And so it can be something that's hard to get enough of through food. So those are the main minerals that I want to talk about. I know I went through them kind of quickly. You can always slow me down and rewind. But I just wanted to give you guys those Oh, I forgot to cover low signs. So signs of low magnesium, anxiety, irritability, restless sleep, constipation, headaches, and cramps. I did say that. Pregnancy brain. But I wanted to give you guys like some specific like RDAs, how to get it, things to look out for because working on these things can be really awesome. Some just general, like really great mineral replenishing foods in just general would be things like nettle leaf infusions. You can get nettle leaves that are dry. Take like half a cup or a cup, put it in a quart of water, let it sit either on your counter in the sun for 4 to 8 hours, and then drink that. It's super mineral rich. Bone broth is fantastic. Bee pollen is great. Brewer's yeast that is non-fortified, non-enriched. You don't want it to have the synthetic B vitamins added to it. But brewer's yeast is great. Eggs are awesome. Dairy's fantastic. Oysters are super mineral rich. Beef organs, depending on like your iron status, be cautious with them, but beef organs can be really awesome. Eggs, I can't remember if I said that. I'm trying to think of like anything else. Cheeses are great. Fruits in general, this is why I'm like so flabbergasted at like the don't eat fruits because they have too much sugar in them. Like women are so depleted nutritionally and minerally to tell them to like not eat fruits because they have too much sugar in them just makes no sense to me because that's where we get so many of our minerals. Coconut water is awesome. Herbal teas are just great in general. Fruit juices can be great. Just make sure you have them in a blood sugar supportive way. Try to think of anything else that's super, super helpful. I think that's it. Sprouted seeds can be really great. Dark chocolate's awesome. Avocados. Just like eating a really nice whole food diet, nourishing the heck out of your body and not skipping meals, not skimping on meals as why either. So not skipping or skimping. Getting enough sleep, adding sea salt to your water is huge. Just really taking care of yourself and replenishing your body with nutritionally dense foods can be such a game changer. It was a huge game changer for my hair health, my nail health, my energy, my thyroid, my fertility, etc. So, without these minerals and without nutrients, your body can't do what it needs to do. And this is why we're so passionate with understanding minerals, understanding how to replenish them, and doing them in a physiological supportive way, not necessarily always using man-made supplements. There's a time and a place, but not always using man-made supplements because we don't want to accidentally throw imbalances out of whack. So, next section I want to talk about is why women are especially vulnerable to mineral depletions and imbalances. Some higher, like some main reasons is we bleed monthly. You know, we lose our period blood monthly. That is a nutrient loss. It's important. We need it in order to, cycle properly, create hormones, and it's very functional for us as women. But we also have to be aware of it and know that we need to replete it. Same things go for pregnancy, breastfeeding, postpartum, and perimenopause. We have huge nutrient needs during those phases of our life. Pregnancy, mamas give around 4 pounds, which is about 10% of your mineral stores to baby each pregnancy. And it takes like two-ish at least, if not up to 5 years, to replenish those minerals. I'd say if you're being really, really intentional, you can expedite that, but a lot of our society unfortunately isn't intentional because they don't have this education. So pregnancy is huge. Oh my goodness, breastfeeding is such a big demand. It's very minerally and nutritionally expensive. Just postpartum, perimenopause, etc. So we have surging nutrient needs all across our life. We also can have a higher stress load, whether it's mental, physical, emotional. That also plays a really big role in depleting minerals faster. I also feel like we're very, very targeted with diet culture, low carb trends, like I had just mentioned, low fat trends, etc., which then reduces our potassium, magnesium, and sodium intake. There's also like a war on dairy right now, which just dairy is so nutrient dense. It's so sad to me that one, I was dairy free for 7 years. So I'm right there with you. But it's so sad to me that so many women are either going dairy free without like actually needing to, or they can't digest dairy because of other things going on in their body. So then they're dairy free for a really long time because of that. We also just have like a massive under eating epidemic with women. I would say 99.5% of our clients come to us significantly under eating. And this isn't just like under eating on accident by like 100 to 200 calories. This is like 400, 600, 900, 1,000 plus caloric deficits. And I think this really comes from, diet culture and low carb trends. I also hear from so many clients, it just like breaks my heart. They're struggling with weight loss. They go to the doctor. The doctor says, "Have you tried eating less?" And it's so sad because that's not how women work. And if you want to learn how women's metabolism and hormones work, we have a master class called Women's Metabolism and Hormones Made Simple. I'm going to make sure I link that. So it's really important to understand how women's physiology and metabolism and hormones work. And once you understand that when we undereat, we contribute to chronic stress. And pop quiz, what happens when we're under chronic stress? We get mineral depletions, which then, pop quiz, what happens? Causes more chronic stress, right? So it's really important to understand that eating enough is huge. And I'm not talking about just like eating 1,800 calories. Most women need 2,000, 2,300, 2,500. If you're pregnant, high 2,000s. If you're, maybe even 3,000s. There are days where I eat 3,500 calories, and that might sound crazy. And if you're just learning this and you don't necessarily know much about the women's metabolism yet, that might sound like, man, how are you not gaining weight? But it's because women need nourishment and need replenishment. And when we don't eat enough, we hold on to weight. So there's a massive, massive, massive under eating epidemic. We also have like GLP-1 stuff going on, which is causing a lot of women to have thyroid dysfunction, mineral depletion. They're under eating significantly, which then plays a big role in a lot of this. So just something to be very, very careful of, cognizant of, and, just aware of because a lot of this is stuff that we have a say in, and unfortunately, the education is just not there. Caffeine, massive caffeine intake and alcohol intake definitely plays a role in mineral loss as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think I'm going to leave that there. So, how to start replenishing. I talked about it in the nutrient or in the mineral section with covering sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium, foods, RDA, etc. So just start adding in more food, adding in nutrient-rich foods, meals, snacks, beverages as much as you can. I guarantee you will see a difference. If you can, testing is fantastic. Highly recommend the hair tissue mineral analysis. We run it with every single one-on-one client. Blood work is also fantastic. For minerals, I really like to look at the HTMA, and then if we can also look at blood work, that's great. This will give you the most tailored approach to your needs, which will give you the fastest results because we know exactly what your body needs, what your ratios are, and then we're not accidentally like playing guessing games of like, do you need sodium, do you need potassium, do you need magnesium or calcium, whatever it is. So testing can be a really great way to expedite the replenishing process. Highly recommend testing before you want to get pregnant because, like I said, you give baby a lot of minerals. And you'll also give baby your mineral status, so you imprint it on baby. So if you have depletions or excess or anything like that, baby is going to get that as well. And then now we know that that can contribute to symptoms for the rest of their life. So very, very helpful. It's great postpartum for replenishing. It's a really big, it's a really fantastic, very affordable tool that can be really, really awesome. But you have to like definitely just, I say this like totally like no strings attached. Work with someone that knows what they're talking about. Unfortunately, there's a lot of mineral providers out there that think that you can like take supplements for these things, or they don't fully understand like the nuances of like highs and lows because it's not as straightforward as blood work. And I see a lot of practitioners out there just recommending, like giving really, really poor recommendations that actually end up causing more harm than good. So just be very, very cautious. Make sure you like look at client results and reviews, talk to them, ask them questions. You at least have some like baseline knowledge about all of this from today's too. Hydrating with minerals with electrolytes is great. I really like the Cure electrolyte powder. They're one of my favorites because they use coconut water for their potassium base. My body does not like any synthetic potassium at all. So it really likes potassium from coconut water and foods. So I really like Cure. Just like sea salt and lemon water is awesome. teas that I mentioned, coconut water is great, bone broth is great, milk is fantastic. Trying to also balance your protein, fats, and carbs together. I do have a resource called 5 Days for Better Energy, Periods, and Mood. I'll also talk about it. It's called 5 Day Reset. And that teaches you all about balancing your blood sugar. Guys, it's only $7. I highly recommend it. I wanted to create this resource so it is very accessible and usable, and it teaches you the basis of blood sugar regulation because this was such a huge part of my journey. I always jokingly say that like blood sugar regulation solved 90% of my problems, and it's because when your blood sugar is dysregulated, that adds chronic stress to your symptom or to your system. And you guys should be like repeating this in your sleep now. When you have chronic stress, you burn things at a higher rate, you have digestive issues, etc. And if we're not digesting things well, we have mineral imbalances, etc. So the 5 Day Reset, the whole name is 5 Days to Better Energy, Periods, and Moods. It's a resource. It's very, very affordable. I intentionally made it that way. I'll put it in the show notes. Highly recommend it. It teaches you all about blood sugar regulations and balancing. And then I'd also say, please, please, please try to avoid over supplementing. Some minerals need balance, or all minerals need balance. And when we over supplement, we can accidentally take way too much of something, or it depletes something else, or we're just causing further imbalances. So there is a time and a place. We use supplements with clients once we know their hair test, but until we actually know their hair test, which is the HTMA or blood work, we don't use mineral supplements because we don't want to cause more issues. So definitely be very careful. I would say topical magnesium is pretty safe. Sea salt is awesome. Potassium-rich foods are great. Magnesium-rich foods, calcium-rich foods are awesome. So a lot of info. Hopefully this is helpful. I really just want to like reiterate that recovering from burnout is not just about self-care and bubble baths and, watching movies. It is about being aware of your lifestyle and your schedule and your habits. It's about intentionally replenishing minerals and nutrients and nourishing yourself. It's about giving your body the raw materials it needs to function. And when you do this, I promise you will feel so much better and so different. It was so pivotal and key to my journey. It's why we are such like a mineral and nutrient focused practice. And then also a lifestyle and nervous system practice. It's because it is what works. And I think it's the thing that a lot of practitioners miss because a lot of people go for the sexy stuff. They go for the mold protocols, the parasite protocols, the gut healing stuff, the adrenal herbs, whatever it might be, but then they miss the basics and the raw materials and the foundational things that your body needs to actually recover and repair. So then you're kind of constantly on this hamster wheel chasing the next thing to try, but it's because we completely miss the foundations. And that's why like all of our resources, the 5 Day Reset, the Metabolism Masterclass, our PCOS 101 class, our Back to Balance online course, and all of our one-on-one work, we focus on mineral replenishment, vitamin replenishment, working on lifestyle, working on stress, working on your nervous system. Work on those first, and then we can get fancy. But if we get fancy before working on those basics, you're kind of constantly stuck in a loop. So if you want to grab any of those resources, I'll put them in the show notes. And then if you want a one-on-one approach where you really want that like personalized touch to your approach, you want to expedite the process. Fantastic if you've been struggling for a long time with gut stuff and nothing's getting better, or you want to have a baby in the next like year or two. Highly recommend prepping for pregnancy 6 to 9 months plus in advance. If you struggle with mineral or not mineral issues, if you struggle with like endo or any cycle issues or autoimmunity or PCOS, highly recommend working with minerals. And if you take some of the actual steps from today's call and make note of little shifts that you see. So like if you start adding in some of the mineral rich beverages or some of the foods or just even more sea salt, like notice even the small little increase of mineral replenishment. Like what happens with your energy? How's your sleep? How's your mood? So many of my clients are like, oh my God, I cannot believe just increasing my sea salt intake played such a big role. So I hope this was awesome and helpful and tangible. And please, please share with other ladies in your life because as you can see, us ladies are a little more prone to burnout and mineral burnout and depletion. So the more we share, the more we know, the better and more nourished we can be, and the healthier we will be as a society, because the more healthy we are, the more healthy our babies are, and it plays a really big role just in generational health. So pass down generational health as much as you can. Even if you don't have kiddos, send this to your sister, send it to your best friend, send it to your auntie, so they can start replenishing things too, because, a nourished woman is a force to be reckoned with. So hope this is helpful. We will see you guys in the next episode.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you for hanging out with us on the Wild Muse podcast. If you loved this conversation, we'd be so grateful if you left a review and shared it with a friend who needs to hear this.
And if you really loved it, take a screenshot, share it on your stories, and tag us. We'd love to see it. Until next time, stay wild, stay fierce, and keep owning your journey.